So we will go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us. There's a lot of people here tonight who I know through email. Some of you I haven't met at all. I'm looking forward to it as things start opening up, but I'm also excited that this really is an opportunity for us to summarize a lot of work that's been done over the past 15 months. And so to see some more people learning about this, joining us tonight, it's really exciting, and look forward to the discussion that we're going to have. So I am going to be speaking for about 30 or 35 minutes. And then you're welcome to put comments or questions in the chat box, but I think it'll work well if we hold questions until the end. Also, our internet, it'll surprise you all, it's a little quirky. And so sometimes we lose connection. And if we do that, you can all just pick up and have a little social time while Amy and I eventually come back on. It usually takes maybe 2 or 3 minutes for us to come back on. But otherwise, unless anybody has any logistical or questions like that at this point, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start. But does anyone have any questions? Okay.
Christina, just remember to tell everyone who you are.
Thanks, Amy. I'm Christina Studebaker with United Way, the Community Impact Coordinator, who's been working on a lot of this childcare stuff for the past 15 months. I started a year ago, January. So can everyone see that? Mm-hmm. Thumbs up? Okay.
Yes.
Good. So what I am doing is summarizing 15 months worth of work. And I have a lot. For those of you who haven't met me before, you will quickly learn that I love data and I like to summarize things in charts, but hopefully in ways that are helpful. But I do have a lot to get through. The good thing is that we are recording, so you can go back later to look at something again. I'm also happy to have conversations to circle back around during tonight's conversation or any other time. But for those, just to give people a heads up, we are going to go through quite a bit of information tonight because we've done quite a bit of work, and I'm excited to share it with you. So what we've done over the past 15 months is a variety of community and educational work. And that education has been inward looking for us, internal, as well as educating the community. So we've had community conversations just in general. We've had community members who have been serving on committees with us. We've surveyed the public a couple times about childcare. Some of the educational things we've done, educating ourselves and one another in the community. We've had bi-weekly town hall meetings between mid-October to mid-March. And we've attended webinars, been in touch with experts within and outside of the county. And we also have this amazing documentary called No Small Matter that I have DVDs available in the office. You can look at that online. You can see a trailer on YouTube or something, get a sense of it. It's a really great resource. And if anyone is interested in seeing that, just let me know and I'll get that to you. But so this is the bulk of the source of the information that I'm summarizing tonight comes from all these different things, these activities that we have been engaged in since February of last year. So also, at the same time we were beginning our work in February of 2020, the Department of Children and Families at the state of Wisconsin was really digging in on this work also. And so lucky for us, they had identified 4 factors around which they were guiding their work. And we took our cue from that also. And those factors, those characteristics of the child care system are access to it. So how much is available and can people access geographically in their area, affordability for the families, the quality of the care, and then workforce issues. Those, I think before the work that was being done by the state were often overlooked. And there's a few things that go into workforce. It's what does the workforce look like, and what do they, how are they compensated? Because they are really the foundation of our system. If we don't have child care providers, everything else sort of doesn't matter. So starting at sort of the 30,000 foot view, I would ask you to think about what comprises, when we talk about Door County's child care system, what comes to mind? And you might think, when you think of the word system, that you've got something that's sort of organized and structural like this, where you've got a center hub and you've got various parts that are connected to that center hub. But you might also have something that's like this, a bit more random and scattered. You might have little smaller hubs that take care of things, reach out to people. And then you might also have something like this, where parts of the system are organized, but other parts of the system are disconnected and harder to know about. And so the thing about this one and this system, which might actually be closer to the truth, is to think about if you're an outsider coming in, if you're a young parent for the first time, or somebody who's thinking of coming to Door County and you want to know what childcare is available, when you're trying to figure out what that is, and our system looks like this or this, that's a challenge. That's a hurdle for people to overcome. And I think that these are more accurate representations than this organized system of what we've got. But the system I think of as how are we caring for the children, and all of those things come into play. So we really want to capture all the ways kids in our county are being cared for. So we did a community survey back in May 2020. So we were 2 months into the shutdown, the safer at home mandate due to COVID. And we were targeting families with young children. We wanted to know, thinking that things might be changing in September of 2020. That was optimistic of us. But we were wanting to know what situation would parents find themselves when schools opened up, but yet parents might still be working from home, and the landscape of work and childcare had changed significantly from before this. And so overall, we had over 200 respondents, but not everyone answered all the questions. So for this question, looking at before the safer at home mandate, did they rely on someone other than themselves or their partner to care for their children for any part of the day? We had 194 people respond to that question. And 81% of them relied on somebody other than themselves or their partner to care for their kids. And this is all the ways that that care was provided from our people who responded to the survey. So I think it's just interesting. What we did was look at who's caring for the children. Also, are those people being paid? Or are they not being paid? And so when we think about, often when people think about a child care system, their mind goes to the licensed child care group facilities. But we have less than half of the people responding to the survey who got care that way. And what's interesting is that also this here, 35.4 and down here, 0.6, 36% of the respondents don't pay for care. But then we've got a good chunk of other things where people are relying on care that's still paid for. And we asked people to indicate all of the things that apply. So this is why these numbers, these percentages total to more than 100. But this gives you a sense of the complexity of our childcare system when you think about the system defined as how are we caring for our young children in the county. Also, we ask them to tell us how many of the different ways they're relying on, and more than a third of the respondents rely on more than one childcare method to provide care for their children. So we can ask ourselves then, the system is, how are we caring for the children? Another question is, how many children in Door County need care? And according to the US Census in 2019, which is the most recent year for which data is available, over 1,000 children are younger than 5 years old in Door County, and all of those kids need to be cared for. Now, the census doesn't break it down in a finer detail at the public sites where data is reported, but you could estimate that about 200 kids per age gives you 800 children younger than 4 years old. So we think 5-year-olds for the most part are in kindergarten being cared for, but we've got 800 children younger than 4 years old. If we go back to that previous table and we think that, take as a guide, 35% of them are being cared for by a family member or somebody who's not being paid. That leaves 65% who are being cared for at some point by somebody who is a paid child care provider. That is equal to about 500 children who are being cared for by somebody who is being paid to provide that care. Among our 3 licensed group child care centers in Door County combined, there's a total of about 225 slots available. When you add in our 2 certified home-based providers that are able to accommodate about 15 or 20 more kids, we have 250 to 275 kids that are being cared for in ways that we really don't have a lot of good information on. So there's a good bit of the system that it must be in operation because kids are being cared for, but we need to wrap our arms better around how that part of the system, how those parts of the system are operating. So then if you look at, well, we've got people who are relying on care, child care, what do those folks look like? We see that for the people who responded to the survey, which could have been male or female, but for the most part, based on what we know, most of the people who responded to the survey were probably female. 96 of them worked outside the home on a regular basis, part-time and full-time. Also, their partner or spouse did, about 93%. So we've got working parents who need care. What type of work do they have? They have full-time work. And beyond that, what type of work do they have? They have year-round full-time work. These are the people who are needing childcare in our county. Now, this survey was conducted in May, but it was during COVID. So if anything, these numbers probably underreport the number of people who at certain times of the year come to the county and work seasonally. We also asked them to tell us report on how childcare was working for them in the county. And this is great. We're asking them to agree or disagree with the statement, I'm happy with the quality of the childcare I use and the location is convenient. We have a large number of people who are agreeing with those statements. That makes us feel really good. But then we go down to some additional questions. So I have trouble finding childcare, I have trouble affording childcare, and I have concerns about too many caregivers. Here, blue and green are not good. People are agreeing that they're having trouble. We have between 45 and 50% of the respondents indicating that they are having trouble with one or more aspects of childcare. And then we asked a final question, just overall, how happy are you with childcare, your current childcare arrangement? And 30% of the respondents were unhappy. So you can debate where's the critical, you're never going to make everyone happy. You could also argue that 30% of the people unhappy with their childcare arrangements is something to pay attention to. So then in November, we did a community survey, and we used the Sturgeon Bay software program that sends out messages to people in their system. A lot of them are Sturgeon Bay, but they're across the county. So we were now focused on beyond people who have kids, what are your aspirations for the county, and where does childcare fall within that? So the beginning of this survey was really just what are the areas that need to be that are important to the county. And we have people ranging from 20 years old to 85 years old who are responding to this survey. At the top, we have childcare being the most important, identified by 68% of the people. We asked them to identify the top 3 most important issues. And it won't be surprising to you that childcare and housing are the top 2. And then you see where it starts to trickle down significantly after that. And there are things down lower in the list that I'm not showing on screen today, but I'm happy to talk to people in more detail later about that. So we also looked at how do these things overlap? And so we know that these things do not operate in silos, that both housing and childcare are related, and we need to pay attention to those together. Those needs go together, and if we do well on both of them, that's great. If we do well on one of them and poorly on the other, there's only so much progress we can make. And that they also tie to the issue of workforce attraction and attention. People are asking questions about, they not only ask questions about housing and childcare, these are essential things for getting people hired in the county. And for them to stay here, a lot of people can, or not a lot of people necessarily, but people can come to the county and think, I can work this out once I'm in the county. But then a lot of them end up leaving because it turns out they can't solve these issues. So we know that we need to pay attention to all of these things together, and we're working with community partners to do that. So also, once again, going back to these 4 guiding characteristics of access, affordability, quality, and workforce, we asked people to report the importance, their belief in the importance of each one of those factors. And what we have is overwhelming support, people recognizing that all 4 of those factors are very important. So then another thing that we did was we knew that we had a big picture view, but there were a lot of things that we could benefit from a deeper dive. So we held bi-weekly town hall meetings where we focused on a particular topic during each meeting. And they're all recorded and they're available on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and search United Way of Door County, you will find a listing of these town hall meetings. They are all tagged with this Brain Builders icon. So they're really easy to find. And each one of them has a little summary that goes with it that gives you an overview of the topic covered. So you can make an informed decision about the ones you'd like to watch. But overall, this was the range of topics that we covered. And I'm not going to read all of these, but they cover, we talked to childcare providers in the county. We had a panel of parents. We talked to people from economic development. We talked about how people get education and training in childcare. And we also talked about legislative issues and getting action, the advocacy that's needed. So from these conversations, we learned more about childcare in our county. And then I'm going to summarize these things. I have 4 buckets that I have put highlights and takeaways from these town hall meetings into. And it is a lot. I don't like reading slides, but I will go through these in sort of an orderly fashion, just so you have time to digest the information that's presented. So first of all, we've got brain science. We're talking about brain development, cognitive development of young children. And what the research shows is that children are born learning. People often say kids are like sponges. Well, it's really true. They're just taking in everything. And another key thing to be mindful of is that a lot of research has been done in the past 30 to 40 years. And so we know more than we used to, because it's not uncommon for people to say, well, I didn't have childcare when I was a kid and I turned out okay. Yes, it's true. A lot of us turned out okay, but we know better now. And so when we know better, we have the opportunity to do better. And you can't just wave your hand of 30 to 40 years of research and say, so what about that? It's all fine if we operate how we did 40, 50 years ago. So the kids are learning, and some of their most important interactions are with the adult caregivers. That's definitely their parents. It can also be other family members and child care providers that they have a lot of interaction with. Those interactions are having a significant effect on the formation and development of the children's brains. And so a term that we often use to refer to these people are brain builders. And that's what this 30 to 40 years of research has helped us understand, the ways in which these interactions influence brain development. So the specialized training, education, and skills that child care providers have help support and promote healthy development. And when there are issues with development, kids experiencing a lot of trauma or difficulty early in life, those things just need to be dealt with later. And we talked with elementary school counselors that helped us understand the extra attention and resources that it takes to help kids deal with basic skills like sharing, self-control, and following directions. Those are the sorts of things that are these social and emotional skills that kids are getting early on. So we also learned about this phenomenon in the childcare industry that is referred to as the trilemma. And so before I talk about what that is specifically, once again, I want to just remind people that childcare providers, they're educators, they're brain builders. So it's really just an extension of children's educational experiences. Education doesn't start at kindergarten. Education starts at birth. And so having people with special skills and knowledge is what's necessary, is helpful to provide high quality care. And child care providers, they support the children, but they're also supporting parents. They're giving them feedback about how their kids are developing. They're giving them tips and recommendations about things to do at home to help promote positive development, helping them understand where their children are struggling. And they also have a perspective on community needs, ways in which parents and young families are struggling or challenged, and how they can be helped. So the perspective of the childcare industry is so important. Well, the trilemma that's faced by them is the forces that compete against one another for quality childcare while keeping it affordable and also compensating the workforce and having a skilled workforce. There are limited resources, and all of these things compete for those limited resources. And I will tell you that historically, across the country and also here in Door County, when push comes to shove and things get tight, what has historically happened is that the workforce has sacrificed their pay and their benefits in order to maintain quality and affordability. To give you a sense of the economics behind this, at a group center in Door County, tuition rates range between $205 and $240 per week per child. That differs based on age, and there's a little bit of difference among the different locations, but it falls within this range. That is equivalent to $10,000 to $12,000 per year per child. And that is equivalent to 1 year in-state tuition at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. But people rely on this. Families need jobs. They have other ways that they have to support their family. So this is what it costs. But at that cost, 80% or more is going to staff compensation. But that compensation in Door County is about an average of $14 an hour. And I will tell you that is about $2 an hour higher than the state average, because the administrators, the people in charge at our licensed group centers, are very mindful of the value of skilled staff, and they're doing everything they can to work and fight for good compensation for the staff. To understand what's driving, also contributing to the cost and why the staff costs take up so much of a budget, it comes down to regulations that are provided by the Division of Early Care and Education for the Department of Children and Families for the state of Wisconsin. So they mandate that for children younger than 2 years old, that the ratio of child care workers to children can be no less than 1 to 4. And you can have a maximum number of kids in a group of 8 kids being cared for. So when you think of a business model, when you're up here at the higher ages and you can have one staff person, one child care provider educating and overseeing 13 kids, that's different economics than 1 to 4. But you also have limits on the number of kids you can have in certain age groups. So the licensed group centers, they're always working with these calculations to make sure that everything comes together okay and they can adequately staff the rooms, but also provide as much care as possible to people in the county because they know there's great need. That just gives you a little bit of background for those who may not have been familiar with these regulations before. So then we come again to talking about the workforce. And we have a shortage of child care providers here in the county. That is a phenomenon that is across the state and across the country. It has become more intense, a bigger, more intense shortage in light of COVID. And that creates a workforce crisis on 2 levels. So when we lose those workers, we're missing our childcare workforce. They're a key part of our childcare system, and the system begins to crumble without them. But also that workforce supports the other workforce in Door County. So people who are working at restaurants, in hotels, in manufacturing, at the hospital. All of these people rely on childcare. All these employees rely on childcare. So that's why the childcare workforce is so important. Across our 3 local licensed group centers, there's about a total of about 55 childcare providers. And not surprisingly, in this industry, the vast majority of them are female, and they range in age from 20 to 60. It might surprise you to know that approximately 45% of them have a post-secondary degree related to early childhood education. So once again, these people are getting specialized skill in education. It's not just babysitting. Some more about our workforce. Approximately 20% of them have young children. This statistic is just what I reported earlier, the average hourly rate of $14 with no healthcare retirement benefits. It is commonly stated that childcare providers love their jobs and they're quite devoted, but just economically, it comes to a point where they can't do it anymore. It's also one of the toughest jobs. People will talk about being in a classroom full of 3-year-olds for a day, and we all just go, more power to you. Thank you for what you do. So the centers are always on the lookout for, they're needing to be paying attention to where they're going to keep sourcing and replenishing their staff. So I have a note here that these characteristics increase the odds of someone being in the ALICE population. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So this is an acronym that stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. It is based on research that is conducted by United Way at the national level. And what they have done is they have gone and gathered information on what it takes for an individual or a family to get by. So this includes costs of housing, transportation, food, healthcare. In today's world, especially if you're working technology, so having a cell phone at minimum, having internet access at home, all of these things, taking into account all of these things, what does it cost to get by? And they create 2 different budgets. One is a survival budget, which is really the bare bones. What does it take? What does it cost for an individual or a family to get by? And then we also have a stability budget, which is where we'd really like, that's our goal, is getting everyone to financial stability. So where do we need to be when it comes to that? So first of all, I'm going to go over some survival budget numbers. Like I said, they calculate this for individuals and families. So we've got information here for a single adult, 1 adult, 1 child, and 1 adult with 1 child in childcare. Down here is what I want you to pay attention to right now. Although the survival budget for a single adult is an hourly wage of $11 an hour, a survival budget is not meant to be a long-term budget. It's just what gets you by. And we know that 20% of our child care workforce has at least 1 child. So when we take that into account, we have an hourly rate of $17.61 or almost $20 that's necessary just for a survival budget. And we have the average hourly rate being $14 an hour. Now, these are the things that contribute to turnover. Where do we need to be to provide stability for individuals to have stability? If we look at just the budget for a single adult, we're looking at an hourly wage of $22 an hour. So this just helps us, gives us some guidance on the progress that we need to make in order to provide some stability economically to that workforce. And interestingly enough, I wanted to throw this in. So in that community survey that we did in November, we asked people, they don't understand the term, the acronym ALICE, but we asked them, what do you think is a living wage for a single adult in Door County? And they landed pretty much in the same range here, where an average of $16.34 or an annual income of $35,000. Our community members just understand based on their own lived experience that this is what it takes to get by in Door County. So then finally, from our town hall meetings, the last category that I've summarized some highlights and takeaways from is the economic development. And so we know that everyone in the county is impacted by childcare, regardless of whether or not you personally have young children. It supports the businesses, which supports the economic development. If kids have high quality childcare, it reduces the amount of strain and resources required later on in education. And having childcare provides family stability. So you don't have families that are necessarily needing to split shifts in order to care for their kids, but then not have time together as a family. And also what they learned from the childcare providers about how to interact with their kids and support their development. The impact of childcare is just so incredibly widespread. And we know that one or two changes can result in significant stress in our county. We saw this when the Barker Center closed. There was also a big amount of stress when 4K became available, and that switched the economic model for the licensed group centers, that there were benefits to that, but it still created a lot of stress of things that there was a lot of change, and there needed to be some thought and some energy put into how are we going to navigate through this and come out ahead. So in the larger picture, we know that we need to attract and retain young individuals and families in our county, and that for us, we have special challenges in Door County given our location, and that people have the option of being down in Green Bay or other places in Brown County. We have to have an edge for them to stay up here. And our beautiful land and waters are an attraction for sure, but that only gets you so far. That doesn't help you put food on the table. So we need to make some choices about childcare and housing and put some energy towards those things to help make Door County a community of choice. So if you take all of those various takeaways and highlights and boil them down to, here's the smallest summary of those key takeaways. Many aspects of the county benefit from the availability of affordable, high quality childcare. Kids benefit in multiple ways, physically, cognitively, emotionally, from high quality care. And we've learned that based on scientific research over the past 30 to 40 years. But yet the cost of this care is a burden for many families, but nobody's getting rich off of providing childcare. So the workforce is working for limited compensation. The families are paying college tuition rates without having 18 years to save for that tuition. And we need more providers though. So how are we going to address this? And then beyond that, we once again consider the entire system, that home-based providers are an important part of that system. And it would be helpful if we could better connect with them to support them, because we know they are providing support to the county. So we would like to learn more about that. So what are we going to do? What do we need to pay attention to today in order to have what we want in the future? We had some community discussions about this also. So based on all of the various things that we've done over the past 15 months, we identified 15 possible initiatives that we could take action on. And that list was recently reviewed and discussed by community members. And they were asked to identify, out of those 15, what are the top 3 or 4 things that we need to pay attention to in Door County and that we believe the county, the community, can get behind. And these were our top 4. So we know that money is needed and we need to develop ongoing funding sources to stabilize the system. That can come in various ways. It could be through some sort of tax levy. There's something through the Department of Public Education called Fund 80, where money is generated through a tax levy, and then that can be used for various community initiatives. Childcare is one of them. People have raised the issue of the increased room tax. Some of that money going to support childcare initiatives. It can also come through just state budgets and the business community. And you might have an occasional angel investor that means a lot to them and they want to devote money to help improve the system. All of those things are possibilities, and we probably need to rely on more than one of them in order to stabilize childcare in the county. We also need to pay attention to recruiting childcare providers and training them in a way that keeps them in Door County. And we want to provide resources to home-based providers who are already providing care in the county. And we know that this is such a big issue that advocacy is important. And so there are various ways you can just write to your own elected officials. We're having another event a week from now, May 25th, 6:30 to 8. You'll all be receiving something via email where we're going to have Representative Kitchens, Senator Jacques, and a staff person from Mike Gallagher's office joining us to hear your stories, your experiences, your thoughts about childcare in Door County. And there are other more organized groups, the Wisconsin Early Childhood Association. And this year, as part of the Door County Legislative Days, childcare was one of the issues that was on the list. So we have to continue those efforts because it needs that kind of attention. So that is all that I was going through tonight. I'm gonna give people a minute. I think you all have my email address because I emailed you the link. I'm happy to take questions at any point by email, but also we can open it up to questions or comments now.
Oh, I'm on video. Oh.
Hi, Jane. I saw you briefly.
Oh, there I am.
Yes. I'll try to remember to use last names. We got a few duplicate names. So Jane Wise.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much. That was a great presentation, and all the work that you all have done over the last over a year now. I appreciate everything that you all have done, and it's great to see the result of that, and I'm encouraged. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jane.
Go ahead, Barb Girl.
I obviously came in this midstream on the whole study, but does our local NWTC have a course or like of a year or two to train childcare providers? And is there some kind of incentive for them to stay here?
They do have a program. Some of the courses, I think, either automatically online or at least available online. There currently is no incentive for them to stay within Door County. Part of the discussion that we've had is whether we could promote some sort of cohort training, which would allow them to start building a professional network within Door County to support one another and keep them here, and also whether we can have some sort of arrangement where we might provide some scholarships or something with the understanding that then they agree to provide some work for a certain amount of time within the county.
Steve Jenkins, I see your hand.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. We did a program in Fond du Lac when I was down there that was geared to childcare providers. And what we did, we worked through a process with the state that if you went through a 12-week course and the state helped design the curriculum through our entrepreneurship program, if you completed that, you would be certified, and we had a pool of money set aside for you to start a daycare facility. And I think we had 12 in the class initially, and 6 of those actually opened child care facilities. So there's ways to approach it in terms of entrepreneurship, and we can tie it into our entrepreneurial training program as a special course, not just associated with entrepreneurial training, but entrepreneurial training for childcare providers.
Yeah, and thank you, Steve. I forgot to mention that. I do think that is an important thing that's offered, that can be offered through economic development. And one of the things that I'm not sure that NWTC has as part of their program, but our discussions on this point, one of the things that our group raised is that we'd like to see included in that coursework that talks about running a childcare business. So not just learning the cognitive and physical development, but the business aspects of childcare, and making sure people have that, whether it's a licensed facility or a home-based provider, that they just, as part of their training, they get that information, because over the course of their time working in the field, they may decide to go down different paths. So let's give them that information at the outset.
So I know that was a lot of information and you're all still processing. I saw some of you taking lots of notes, so no pressure. You do not have to have a question at this moment, because I know your brain is probably reeling. Alexis, did you have something?
Yeah, I just had a comment maybe about how sick I am that you related it to the UW tuition. I never thought of it in that regard, and now I'm just like, oh my God, what am I doing? So thank you for that, Christina. I appreciated that. I guess I just want to thank you guys for everything. This really was a great summary of everything we've talked about over the last, like Jane said, 15 months. And I guess I'm looking to focus, because we have the 2 centers in Northern Door and Sturgeon Bay, getting our arms around that home-based childcare. Wondering if anybody, do we have movement on that front, or do we have ideas there? Or is it still kind of just something we know we need to address?
We know we need to address it, and it takes concerted, focused effort. We have some insight from people at the Wisconsin Early Childhood Association and WESN, that Shared Services Network, about ways to go forward. One of the things that they've recommended is that it takes someone who's in the field, who we can connect with, and then they serve as sort of a conduit or a gatekeeper that helps us connect with others, that they vouch for us and say, hey, it's okay to talk to these people. They really do want to support us. So we're on the lookout for anyone like that would talk to us and help us start to make inroads.
That's great perspective, and I appreciate that, so thank you.
Jane?
So Christina, will the slides be available to people somewhere eventually?
Yeah, I can send them to you if you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Also,
Corey?
this is being recorded, so in a few days, give us a few days, but then we'll have this up on YouTube as well, so you can not
But
only—
I know it can be nice to just have a slide to look at rather than finding your way in the video.
So you can hear Christina's wonderful explanation.
Yeah, you can watch it on mute and then you'll find the slide.
Corey?
I was just going to follow up on the question about connecting with the home-based providers. So we only have 2 or 3, potentially 3 certified in-home providers right now. But Christina, you and I can maybe connect separately about trying to reach out to those folks, just to maybe set up a meeting with them and talk a little bit about what we're doing and maybe try to garner some support from them. And then I was also going to add that our, with the Department of Health and Human Services, our economic support team, which has multiple roles, but one of them is the eligibility determination for the Wisconsin Shares Child Care Subsidy. They have developed a policy proposal that we're submitting to the state just to consider maybe loosening some of the restrictions on in-home child care providers in terms of what they need to claim in their income. We know that there are multiple people that receive public assistance benefits that also might stay at home with their kids and maybe care for other children, but because of the way the public assistance rules are written, they are reluctant to claim that income because it will kick them off of the benefits that they need to keep their family afloat. And then on the flip side, the people that use them for childcare can't claim that they're paying the childcare because they have to, you know, if they tell us who their childcare provider is, then they risk losing that provider. So we are proposing to the State Department of Children and Families and Health Services, just looking at those rules. Some of it might require some federal rate waivers, but just looking at ways that we could maybe provide some incentive for more people to do regulated in-home childcare. So that's another thing that we're just kind of working on the side. Won't solve all the problems, but it might bring a few new providers to the table.
Yeah, I love that you guys are working on that. That is something I wouldn't have thought of. It's just, it really does take the community and so many different perspectives and skills in order to work on this issue. So I appreciate that. And we are very excited that COVID restrictions are slowly lifting, because that makes it easier to go and meet with these home-based providers, because we know that they are so busy. To ask them to join one of our evening Zoom meetings or even be tracking a bunch of email, they're already just swamped. And so our ability to go and meet them at a time that's convenient for them. And we've also talked about hosting some events which helps them network with one another. These things, the past year has definitely made it difficult to reach out to those individuals, and we're excited to get out there and talk to people.
Lauren, I'm going to put you on the spot. You had your video on for a second. Do you have the face of our next generation to remind us all while we're working on this, or not at the moment?
No, I did want to say thank you for, bringing this up, and I'm glad I saw that this was happening tonight. As someone who didn't grow up in the Door County community, but lives here now and will be raising my family here now, it has been difficult to figure out what to do for childcare. I mean, that there are options, but they're limited and they're all pretty much full. So I'm still struggling with what we're going to do when I return to work in less than a month. Until I can at the town. So I appreciate everybody, working on this. And I think, there is a lot of work to be done. And I have looked at the in-home care. And I think even those providers that I, got names of, they're all pretty much full. So there's definitely a need, and you know, I'm hopeful that I can be helpful in any way to help solve the shortage, because it's definitely a need for, you know, many. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I think that's really important because, Lauren, you didn't grow up here, but you've been here for a while now. And Lauren is struggling to connect with providers to find out who is available for care. Imagine somebody who is interviewing for a job in Door County, and they either have a young child or they're interested in moving here to start their family. How you navigate that is incredibly difficult. So we want to do what we can to make it easier for everyone.
Hi, I just wanted to come on to say, to reiterate what Jane said right to start us off, that this was an excellent presentation, and that really encapsulates everything that we've been talking about for the past year. And I agree, this slide presentation was excellent, really put it all together as a great visual, and I would like to have a copy. And one more thing I just want to mention to all of you that's here, and I was so happy to see so many people joining this tonight, and Lauren, to hear your story, because you're exactly who we're talking about. We've been talking about all this time, and I would really encourage everyone to not only show up for next week's meeting, but also to tell all your friends, because I really, what we have learned, much to our shock and horror, is that a lot of people don't understand this is a problem. And it's really important that we get our elected representatives to get on board with us and to represent us if they wish to see any growth besides just retired people like myself who've come up to enjoy the beauty and culture of this peninsula. So if you could just spread the word to everyone you know, the more little squares we have, the better impression it's going to make on these, on our representatives.
Thank you, Rosemary. Okay, Christina.
Barb, are you going to say? No? Okay. Well, thank you all very much. I do appreciate it. I know it was a lot. I will send out the PowerPoint to people who request it. I'm not just going to blanket everyone's email, stuff everyone's email boxes with that. So if you want it, let me know. And I'm happy to have any additional conversations. Be on the lookout for the invite regarding next Tuesday's event, like Rosemary just said. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.